Hi everyone, my name is Dimitri and this is take 20 or something of my first attempt at a booktube. Today we're going to be talking about Gravity's Rainbow. Quick outline. First I'm going to give you guys the most basic of plot details. I don't want to go too far into it, but I'll give you basically what this book is about. I'm going to give you guys a quick reflection. Then I'm going to give you guys why is this book relevant? That's step 3. Why is this book relevant or important? Why is it something that people read? Why does it matter as a book? I might do some deeper analysis. I might read one quote, I might not. Let's see how I feel. And then a kit to help you read it. So at the end of this little video, I will have a kit, a travel guide, that if you choose to embark on this voyage of a book, what tools will you need to help you survive it. The most famous quote from this book, the most famous Thomas Pynchon quote probably of all time, is this, and I'm going to take it out of context like most people do, and we're going to have to deal with it. If they can get you asking the wrong questions, they don't have to worry about the answers. This book is deeply paranoid. All of Pynchon's novels have this paranoia in the middle of them. So basic plot as you can get, it's about paranoia. But beyond that, it's a book about a dude that gets hard-ons, and every time he gets an erection, 4 to 10 days later, miraculously a bomb drops on that place. All right, this book takes place in the final days of World War II. Germany is shooting out bombs, knowing that it's going to lose. It's shooting out these V2 bombs. I think it's short for a German word for vengeance. These vengeance bombs, or revenge bombs. And the government is trying to find Tyrone Slothrop. That's the guy that is getting these hard-ons. They're trying to find him and control him, because then they can prevent the bombs or use him in some way for the military, for militaristic reasons. Is that really the story? Yes and no. There are over 400 characters in this book. It has a lot of subplots, a lot of twists and turns. There are large moments where you leave Tyrone Slothrop. I would say even the first section of the book, I had no idea who the main character was. I had to look it up because it seemed like Roger Mexico, this other character, and his girlfriend Jessica were the two main characters, and that turned out to be completely wrong. It is a labyrinth-like book. You will get lost in a maze, and that's kind of the point of it. All right, so quick reflection. How did I feel about this book? Did I like it? Did I not? Jury is still out. I will say, to summarize my reaction, I think this book is genius. But I also think it's kind of a mean book. I think the book is making fun of the reader in some way. His whole point, and I'll go deeper into this in the analysis section, is it's begging you to analyze this book, and then Pynchon just rips the rug from underneath you and says, ha, if you analyze something, you kill it. The more you analyze art, the more you kill art, right? But there's no other way to really make sense of this book unless you analyze parts of it. I'll go more into that later. It is the most demanding book I have ever read by far. I've never had an author or a book ask so much of the reader. Even on an emotional scale. I mean, like, just trying to comprehend what's going on from page to page was challenging at times. And there are some things that are happening that turn out to be these false dreams, or someone thinking about someone else's dream, or the narrator shifts to second person where he's directed towards the reader, and then shifts to third person, and there's time lapses, going back in time, forwards in time. It's a mess, right? But it's purposely done that way. But I've never had a book demand that much, expect so much out of the reader. And in some ways it was fun for that. In some ways it was a book I just wanted to like throw with anger at a wall or something. But ultimately I enjoyed it. I am glad I read it. And I'll explain more of why I'm glad I read it in part 5, or the travel log at the end of this video. If you want to skip ahead, there are links below to skip ahead to whatever section you're interested in. I have read other challenging books, and this really was so much more challenging than the other books. And I'm not bringing up these other books to boost my ethos, but I think they are relevant to a discussion about Gravity's Rainbow. I think they are often compared in some way to Gravity's Rainbow. And so I've read books like Ulysses by James Joyce, which just fell apart on me. And it is also compared to Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I want to do another video about encyclopedic texts and why you should read them. But these are all encyclopedic texts for their movement. Ulysses is the encyclopedic text for the modernist movement. Gravity's Rainbow, if we do it in chronological order, I'm juggling books right now, is for the postmodernist era. And then whatever era we're in now, the postmodernist, the TV era to the internet era, the New Sincerity movement, some people call it that. Infinite Jest is considered the encyclopedic text for that. Okay. What is an encyclopedic text? An encyclopedic text is a novel with so much information, so much going on, that to really understand everything, you have to be either crazy or have dedicated your life to understanding this one book. Gravity's Rainbow has 400 characters in it. There's so much going on. You're not expected to understand everything that's happening, everything that's being thrown at you. There's some deep science in here. There are some passages that will and probably do not make sense. And I opened to a perfect page. There's a math equation right here. And that is beyond any high school math that I ever did. And I think it's important to the book. And you just kind of have to skip through it. Or else you'll go crazy and you'll stop through every moment of this and you won't be able to enjoy it. But isn't that like life, right? Are you expected to understand everything that's happening to you? No. You try to be present as much as you can and get through it and enjoy what you can. And that's kind of how you have to take this book. All right. Encyclopedic text, there's so much going on, yada yada. All right. Gravity's Rainbow is the encyclopedic text for the post-modernist movement. That is the movement after World War II. It was a moment in literature that was responding to the Second World War. We've had 2 of these wars now where the world has gone to shit. And now we have a bomb that can destroy the entire world in a matter of minutes. What does that mean for art? What does that mean for humanity? It's this giant existential question. And postmodernism usually tries to answer that with deep irony, tongue-in-cheek jokes, and being cute and trying to be funny. And the novel that is usually the centerpiece for postmodernism, or what a lot of any discussion on postmodernism will have to talk about, Gravity's Rainbow. It is the granddaddy of them all. And so it's important for that reason as well. Why else should you read this book, or why else is it relevant? It won the National Book Award in 1974, the year after it came out, or whatever. The book came out in 1973. It also should have won the Pulitzer Prize, but it famously did not. I forget if it was the big council or the small council, but one of the councils said, this is the book. And the council that had to approve it said, it's not going to be that book, and we're not going to give it to any other book. Because this book is too pornographic, too disturbing, that we can't give it the Pulitzer Prize. So instead of giving it to the book that deserves it, we're going to give it to no one. No one deserves the Pulitzer Prize that year. So it's one of the famous years that no one won the Pulitzer Prize, but really Gravity's Rainbow should have, and I think justifiably it should have. Okay. Let's move into some analysis of the book. All right. What is this book about? This book is about a lot of things. Although it's not the emphasis of the book, this is a anti-war novel. Fuck the war, that is a quote in the book. Which I guess that's a stupid thing to quote, but it is something kind of central to understanding the book. It is a common refrain when discussing some of the characters that are just trying to live their life amidst all these bombs dropping all around them and destroying their lives. How do you, amongst all this destruction, how do you get any happiness in life? How do you find joy? There are actually no war scenes or like really violent. There are disturbing scenes, but there's no like violent battle scenes. All the kind of battle scenes are almost told through a child's lens, through children's toys or childlike. That has like some childlike quality to it. There's that famous helicopter and hot air balloon fight scene where Slothrop and this other dude are throwing apple pies at people, and it's this like childlike apple pie fight. So there's that. It has a lot to do with control versus hope. If you try to control something, you take away its freedom and its capacity for hope, but also to understand things. In order to understand things, you have to control it a little bit. I'll get more into that at the end of this analysis. It's about man versus nature, man's search to move past nature into plastics, move beyond nature to control or pervert nature. It is about man and machine, man's use of the machine to destroy nature, but also machine starting to destroy man. And the merging of the two, we see lots of symbols of the merging of man and machine, especially when Slothrop starts wearing the Rocket Man costume, and he literally looks like a rocket wandering around all of Europe with this helmet that is rocket-like. We have the North versus the Equator. And just to simplify it for this video, what that really is the Western world trying to control everything. And he kind of, Thomas Pynchon tries to divide the world into the North versus the Equator. But I think it's just easier to think of the Western world trying to control everything around it. Trying to take the hope away from things, trying to control things. It's about paranoia versus anti-paranoia. Paranoia is this religious like feeling. Let me see if I can find the quote. 5:15. I'll read it pretty quickly if I can find it. Okay. If there is something comforting, religious, if you want, about paranoia, there is still also anti-paranoia, where nothing is connected to anything, a condition not many of us can bear for long. That's page 515 in my version. So there's this belief that everything is connected and that everything matters, and that's paranoia, and everything is happening against me because I matter most. And in this book, everything is happening to Tyrone Slothrop, everyone's trying to control him. Or anti-paranoia, nothing's connected, everything has no meaning, and it's this giant existential crisis. And this book gets somewhat meta because this quote pops up in the very middle when things seem to be disintegrating, when the plot seems to be falling apart and nothing actually, things that you thought were connected and had meaning and were attached to each other actually fizzle out and aren't meaningful. And so it gets into this anti-paranoia section of the novel. And the last thing that this book is about, and I think is a good way to analyze it, the sin of analysis. Why it's bad to analyze things, which is ironic. And that's what makes this the top postmodern book, because postmodernism usually deals with irony of some sort. This is a book that begs to be analyzed. It is a trippy book throughout. If you are familiar with Ulysses, it plays like the Nausicaa chapter, which is the dreamlike chapter, where the main character is tripping on absinthe and roaming around the red light district, and things are morphing into lamps and all this crazy stuff's happening. That's the whole book. This is the whole book of Gravity's Rainbow feels like that chapter of Ulysses. It is very dreamlike, and to make sense of it, you have to analyze it. But if you analyze something, you're focusing on one thing instead of another thing. If you analyze one thing, you're not focusing on something over here, and all the other connections start to fizzle out because you're picking one thing to make sense of and saying, I'm going to read this quote because it's more important than the other quotes, kind of like I just did now. But how else do you make sense of something? Much like paranoia, analysis works in a similar way. You think everything is happening for one specific reason. against you or against the plot. When in reality, in the world, everything is happening for all reasons, but also at the same time, everything is happening for no reason. Everything is connected and complicated and messy and disturbing, just like this book. And if that didn't make sense, I'm probably doing this analysis more justice than you might perceive. Because in life, things either are all connected or it's completely meaningless, right? There's really no in between. And this book plays with both thoughts, right? Paranoia versus anti-paranoia. It's deeply ironic. The joke, right, is to understand this book, you have to analyze it. But then if you're analyzing it, you're missing the point of the book. So joke's on you, reader. It's, I think, a pretty genius joke. I think it's also kind of mean. And I think that's what's also beautiful about it. This book is hellish, and it's a Mount Everest type of book. And that brings me into my recommendations for reading. Oh, no, one more thing. About the sin of analysis, this is probably the best quote I found in here related to the sin of analysis. It's on page 856 and 857 of my copy. America was the edge of the world, a message for Europe. Continent-sized, inescapable. Europe had found the site for its kingdom of death. This special death the West had invented. Savages had their waste regions, Kalahari's lakes so misty they could not see the other side. But Europe had gone deeper, into obsession, addiction, away from all the savage innocences. America was a gift from the invisible powers, a way of returning, but Europe refused it. It wasn't Europe's original sin. The latest name for that is modern analysis. But it happens that subsequent sin is harder to atone for. In Africa, Asia, Amerindia, Oceania, Europe came and established its order of analysis and death. What it could not use, it killed or altered. So analysis controls something and it kills what is not useful, or it alters, it changes the meaning that was supposed to be there. Deeply ironic there. All right. What's my recommendation? If you want to read this book, I would say, first and foremost, don't start here. Might sound counterintuitive, but I would read something else by Thomas Pynchon to see if you enjoy his voice. The Crying of Lot 49 is excellent, and it's so much thinner. This copy is about 100 and something pages. It's a lot more manageable. You get Pynchon's craziness, his loopiness, his odd character names, his puns, his disturbing sex jokes, but it's not 400 characters and 900 pages. And so it makes it a lot more palpable, a lot easier to understand. I think it's a great book. Pynchon later on said that he did not like reading writing this book, but I still think it's great. It's also studied a lot in universities, and it's fairly influential, very influential. If you don't want to dive into a book just yet, but you want to get the feeling for Pynchon, the movie adaptation of Inherent Vice, which is also another book by Thomas Pynchon, is pretty excellent. It's directed by P.T. Anderson, who's an amazing director. Highly recommend just going through all of his movies. And I think he perfectly encapsulates. This is like take 20. I'm not starting over. I think he's able to get the tone of Pynchon correct. And I'm usually in the camp of the book is better than the movie, but I haven't read the book, and I enjoyed this movie. And I think he gets Pynchon's tone correct. This paranoia and disturbed feeling and just wonkiness of Pynchon is just all in there. And it's not for everyone. And don't feel bad if you feel like putting this book down. It is not for everyone. I would say if you can make it to page 200 of Gravity's Rainbow, get there, because I think that's when you start to learn the language. Even if you've read Pynchon and you're familiar with him, I think you still need to get to page 200, because that's when the paranoia really kicks in and goes into overdrive, and things start to make sense and to connect. Kind of a spoiler, things fall apart. So what you thought was connected is not connected later on, but enjoy the ride. Okay. Is this book worth it? I think so. It is an Everest type of book. It is this giant. It is one of the hardest books to read, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions. And if you read it, you've conquered something. All right, it's hellish. You have to be kind of crazy to pick it up. And if you weren't crazy before, once you finish it, you will be kind of slightly bonkers or paranoid. You will be crazy after you read it. And I think that's kind of what's beautiful about the book. And if that entices you at all, I would say give it a go or search other avenues. I would not read it alone. I have to give credit where credit is due. I am highly influenced by the Bookchemist. His read-along journey that he did for this book I thought was excellent. And that's how I read it. I don't think you can read this book alone. I think reading it along with someone else, because it's so disturbing, is necessary, or with some sort of guide. There's a quick summary guide that I had to use often, but I also watched the Bookchemist videos that were about every 100 or 200 pages. I'd watch this video to kind of reflect and communicate in the comments about how I was feeling about the book at the time. Like traveling to Mount Everest, once you're in that high of an altitude, your brain starts to work at a 2% function, but you did it. You accomplished something, and maybe it was worth it in the end. I'll leave with one more thing. I am borrowing, but still giving credit to the Bookchemist. I think he has the best metaphor for this book. It is like entering a labyrinth, but this labyrinth is full of porn, and not good kind of porn, if there is good kind of porn. The really disturbing stuff, the stuff that you don't want to see and wish you never had, and parts of it will scar you. And yeah, that's the book. I don't know if I sold it or not. It was a fun read, and I really enjoyed reflecting on it and talking to you guys about it. If you have any questions for me, if you're thinking about picking up Gravity's Rainbow and you want an extra boost of help, if you're in the middle of it and you need some motivation, read in the comments below. Are there other books that you think I would like after I read Gravity's Rainbow? Also comment below. Thank you so much, and goodbye.